Hey, this is my first live. I've never been live before on this great platform called TikTok. And what do I want to talk about? What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about this Diddy case. I want to talk about this Diddy case. And I want to know what you guys think about this Diddy case. So as you know, the verdict just came out and Diddy was denied bail, despite being cleared of the most serious crimes in the sex trafficking trial. So there were five counts. So there was a sex trafficking count. You had the RICO. You had the transportation to engage in prostitution. And then you had some other minor charges. The ones of arson, the ones of kidnapping. I questioned, I questioned why they didn't put the domestic violence, only to find out that the reason why the domestic violence one wasn't put there was because there's something called statute of limitations. So statute of limitations means when a crime happens, you have a limited amount of time, right, to report that crime. If you don't report that crime for some certain crimes in some certain jurisdictions in the United States, you can't come back and then report it when you feel like. Now, that's very controversial. Some people say, oh, the victims might not want to report it at a timely time. Maybe they're still going through trauma. That is true. But think about it. Put yourself in the put yourself in the position of the authorities and the police. They may not be able to get DNA. Your own recollection of events may not be the same. Witnesses might not be alive. Witnesses might not want to come out to corroborate your story. So this is why they say it has to come, the story has to be told within a certain time period. And I think that's about, in some places is 8 years, some places is 10 years. So that domestic violence case, back to what I was saying, that domestic violence case was, I think it ended around 2024. Before then, that act started in 2016. So that's why the feds could not put the domestic violence as part of the federal charges. But the federal charges were the sex trafficking one, and they also had the RICO. Now, the RICO started sometime in 1973, and it was really done to get drug families, the what you would call the mobsters. So the mobsters was the reason why they did RICO, because it was so difficult to get these people, right? So RICO actually stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, right? And it was really to get these people. Like I said, it's a US federal law designed to combat organized crime by targeting patterns of criminal activity connected to an enterprise. We could call it a business, an enterprise. It's now often used in cases involving criminal organizations. And usually they had used it. I think they were successful with the R. Kelly case. But if you go back, the Gambino family and some other families in New York, they used the RICO to get them, right? But in this particular case, RICO is actually, when you say a criminal enterprise, you tend to have more than one person in that criminal enterprise, not just one person. So that's where a lot of people were like, okay, so if you're charging him for RICO, then who are the other people that are co-defendants? It can't just be one person. It can't just be Diddy. Irrespective of what you think about Diddy as a human being, because I think he's quite despicable. I think he's a degenerate, and I think is not a good person, right? But the law, the federal law, does say that you have to have a co-conspirator. Now, the co-conspirators, somebody called Christian Coram and also somebody called D-Rock, those people were nowhere to be found in the trial, which left Diddy, right, to be standing alone in this particular RICO charge. And under RICO, it says that a person has committed or has to have committed at least 2 acts of racketeering activity drawn from a list of 35 crimes. That's 27 federal crimes and 8 state crimes within a 10-year period. That is when you can now charge somebody for RICO. Now, some of those things are you've invested proceeds of a pattern of racketeering activity into the enterprise. You have conducted or participated in the affairs of the enterprise through the pattern of racketeering activity. You can use all sorts of things like bribery, coercion, sexual assault, and some other things. And you've got a civil part of RICO, and you've also got a criminal part of RICO. But the main thing is the organized crime element of RICO. So the feds now came up with that RICO charge. And I think the issue that they had in this particular case is that they could not convince the jury. So we had eight men and 4 women in the jury, right? And they could not convince the jury. They were not able to convince the jury that he was guilty of RICO. Now, again, what are the predicate offenses? They've been talking about predicate offenses, that there has to be offenses under RICO. This includes any violation of state statutes against gambling, murder, kidnapping, extortion, arson, robbery, bribery, dealing in obscene matter, or dealing in a controlled substance or listed chemical. Any act of bribery, counterfeit, theft, embezzlement, fraud, dealing in obscene matter, obstruction of justice, slavery, racketeering, gambling, money laundering, commission of murder for hire, embezzlement of union funds, drug trafficking. Long-term and elaborate drug networks can also be prosecuted using the continuing criminal enterprise statute, criminal copyright infringement, money laundering, and related offenses, bringing in and aiding or assisting aliens in illegally entering the country. And you have to have 2 acts of this racketeering activity. So there have been some famous cases. The Lucchese crime family was one of the 5 families that dominated the organized crime activities in New York City. And there was a cowboy mafia in 1978, 1979 Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, 1980 Gildosia, 1984 Key West Police Department, 1984 The Order, 1986 Intra Contra, 1989 Michael Milken, and they've been different. I talked about the Gambino case earlier, 1992. John Gotti, some of you might know who John Gotti is. John Gotti and Frank Losasio were convicted on April 2nd, 1992 under the RICO Act and later sentenced to life in prison. So the feds have been able to get people on RICO. Do you understand? They've been able to get people on RICO. The Bonanno family in 2004 as well, right? And, so many other people have been, even in 2023, President Donald Trump. In August 2023, the District Attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, Fannie Wills, filed charges under the Georgia State RICO Act against Donald Trump and parties involved, including Rudy Giuliani, Mayor of New York. Stay with me. The Georgia law contains a list of 40 state crimes or acts that together can be classified as racketeering schemes. It is broader than federal law in that attempting, soliciting, coercing, or an intimidating another person to commit any of the offenses can also be considered organized crime, right? Now, what now happened in this particular case? What happened? 12 people, 4 men, 4 women, and 8 men did not believe after 36 witnesses. 36 witnesses were interviewed in 31 days, and they gave different testimonies. But they were not able to convince the jury that it was Rico. I'll come to the other charges in a minute. Please leave your comments in the comment section. Thank you for joining my live. This is my first live, and I'm happy a lot of people are joining. I really appreciate you. Love you guys. Why weren't they able to convince them? This is the federal government. These are the feds. These are the prosecutors. They have the information at disposal at everybody, and they had a long time to prepare for this case. Don't forget that his house was raided, or his houses was raided in March 2024. We're in July 2025. So they've had a long time to prepare. That's the feds. One of the reasons why I think they were not able to convince the jury is that they were not able to ascertain that there was a hierarchical structure in his businesses that was created for the purposes of crime. So you guys may know Diddy, Puff Daddy's had a lot of names. I think the current name is Brother Love or whatever. I don't like the guy. Even then in the 90s, I thought it was always this guy always coming to just steal the shine of Biggie, always coming to steal the shine of whoever. And, he will not even allow his artists to shine. That's the opinion I had about him then. His artists created good music, no doubt. But I didn't like the guy personally. But to now convince me that the music industry that he did, the Ciroc that he did with the liquor, is other businesses like Sean John, Sean John fashion. There's the perfume industry that he's doing as well with the Sean John cologne. He's done jeans. You're telling me that all those people that worked in that establishment and worked in those enterprises were there to support freak-off activity? Is that what the feds want the jury to believe? Because if we go back to what I was saying about the mafia families and some of these families that were indicted on RICO, they had criminal enterprises. So they either had drug dealers out there pushing drugs for them. They had prostitutes that were working for them and bringing money back. They were dealing in illicit and banned substances like illegal alcohol, contrabands, and different things, right? And to now take that back, do you understand? To now take that back and say his businesses were created as a criminal enterprise. Number one, you have to show the hierarchy of that organization, those his organization, to show that they were involved in criminal activity. Clearly, he was involved in in immoral and set of immoral acts. That's undeniable. But some people might even say it's not immoral. Immoral to who? Immoral to me, but to you, it might not be immoral. To you, it might not be immoral. So it depends on whose perspective you're looking at. So I think that's one of the reasons why they couldn't tie it in. And the witnesses' accounts, had it been they had, employees that said, okay, when I joined this organization, I knew that I would be doing illegal stuff from the beginning. Like when you join the mafia or you join a drug dealing family, you know that you're going to have to sell drugs. You know that if you're an accountant that is working for a mobster, you know you're going to have to hide money. If you're a lawyer working for a mobster, you know you are going to have to do some shady stuff from the off. So I think that's the reason why they were not able to successfully convince the jury. Guys, please, put the likes. Please follow me on TikTok. I intend to do this more often. If you like my content, if you like what I'm talking about, please put it in the chat. So I think they couldn't get him on that racketeering because there wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't enough evidence to convince a jury of 12 people that his businesses were created to support a criminal activity. So that's number one, right? And then when we now go to the sex crimes, what are sex crimes? Yeah, we're looking at coercion, we're looking at force, and we're looking at fraud, right? Those are the sex charges, the sex trafficking charges. Now, you see, for me, what I understand sex trafficking to be, and if I'm wrong, please, call it out in the comment section. We're all learning here. But what I understand sex trafficking to mean is, you know how you have people who, young people, sometimes older people who have been forced or lied to go and work in another country, and then they now take their passport from them and they now sell them. Sometimes they sell these people to people that want to use them for sexual purposes. That's what I understand sex trafficking to mean. And it's a very, very terrible thing, and it's a very, very serious thing in many countries in the world. It's a huge global problem. Sex trafficking is a huge, huge, huge major problem. And the actual count 2 was sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, which was found not guilty for. Now, what did the prosecutors say? Prosecutors said that Diddy recruited Ventura, that's Cassie, into his space after she signed with his record label Bad Boy, and he began to flirt with her. Cassie Ventura testified in court that she was afraid of Sean Combs, and who physically abused her at times, wanted to do whatever she could to keep him happy, including participating in his drug-fueled sex marathons known as freak-offs. He would hire male escorts and watch them engage in sexual activity with Cassie. The music mogul also sometimes filmed these encounters, which Ventura said he later used as blackmail. The charge, that actual charge, that sex trafficking charge that was found not guilty of, it carries a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison and a maximum of a life imprisonment. So if he had been found guilty, and he had 2 charges, one for Cassie, the other one for Jane Doe. If he had caught one of those charges and had been found guilty, that would have been 15 years. Right? The second one would have been another 15 years. Meaning 30 years. Meaning 30 years. Meaning 30 years. It would have gone down for 30 years. But it was found not guilty because they were not able to prove to that jury that it was by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, why couldn't they? Because they were text messages, and the ladies that came, although they said they were afraid of him, they also said they were in love with him. And they wanted to make him happy, and he was taking care of them, and there was evidence that they also engaged with the sex workers without Diddy being there. But some are saying that no, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if they are there, or they love him today and they don't love him tomorrow. All it takes is once. That is true. But when you're facing a jury of 12 that have to prove something beyond reasonable doubt, you can't go with sometimes I love him, sometimes I don't. It's going to be very difficult for that jury to be able to make a decision, especially a decision that can take somebody to the rest, to take their, their, to take somebody to jail for the rest of their lives. So he was found not guilty of that with 2 counts. So both for Jane Doe and for Cassie, he was found not guilty of that. If he had caught one of that, like I said, 15 years, the other one, another 15 years, would have gone down for 30 years. We're not even talking about the other cases. So literally those 5 counts would have taken this guy out of the orbit. There would have been no Diddy, he would have died in jail. So him being found guilty of those 2 charges, which is count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, was a win for the defense. I'll cover the defense strategy in a different live video. I just wanted to cover just the counts in this one. And let's go to count 3. Count 3 is the one that was found guilty, and this count had 2 charges. So one for Jane Doe and one for Cassie. So what is count 3? Transportation for purposes of prostitution. He was found guilty. Absolutely 100% found guilty. So the government charged Combs with 1 count of transportation for the purposes of prostitution related to Cassie Ventura. Prosecutors claim the music mogul knowingly transported Ventura and other male escorts across state lines and intentionally and internationally for the purposes of engaging in prostitution. And multiple times between 2009 and 2018, Combs paid for Ventura and male sex workers to fly to cities across the world, including New York City, this guy, Los Angeles, this guy was just flying everywhere. It was just flying everywhere, Los Angeles and other parts of the world, right? Another part of the world, just flying around and just, having a great time. So that one, they got him on that one. Why? Because there was clear evidence. What was the clear evidence? They had flight receipts. They also had hotel receipts. So that was very easy to prove. They also recruited them through an escort service called Cowboys for Angels, and they were paid, that's the male sex workers, were paid up to $6,000 to participate in freak-offs, but only received the money when Combs felt their performances were complete. That charge carries a maximum of 10 years in prison. Now, there are 2 counts. There's for him and Cassie, and for him and Jane Doe. Sentencing hasn't happened. They're saying that's probably going to take 3 months to happen. Now, a judge can decide not to give him the maximum sentence because he's a first-time offender. A judge can also decide to give him consecutive or concurrent charges as a sentence. If it's consecutive, he's in trouble. Meaning when he finishes the first 10 years, if he gets 10 years, which is the maximum, which I don't think they will give him, but with this case, you never know. When he finishes that first 10 years, then he'll start another 10 years, making 20. That's why some people have been saying 20. If you hear 20 anywhere, that's where that 20 years is coming from. Or the judge can say serve it consecutively, which means as he's serving one, is serving the other parallel, which means maximum of 10 years, which means he will not stay in jail for more than 10 years. So we don't know. Everyone's just speculating until the judge sentences him in a couple of months' time. We will not know. That's the truth. So that's that one. That's the transportation for the purposes of prostitution is the one that he has been convicted of. And they denied him bail. He was denied bail. And the judge wasn't just comfortable that he would not flee the country. They said it's a flight risk. I'm not so sure about that flight risk part. And the reason why I'm not sure about the flight risk part is between between the time that he was raided, his house was raided, and his arrest, it took about 6 months. If he wanted to run, he would have run. He would have gotten a fake passport. He would have disguised and got the hell out of the US. He didn't do that. The verdict has been read now. The serious crimes that's going to put him away for the rest of his life. He was found not guilty. What is the motivation for him to run away? I don't see any motivation for him to run away. I really don't. But they can say he can potentially now go and beat somebody else the way he beat Cassie Ventura in 2016, which is a horrible, deplorable act by Diddy. But there was no domestic violence in that case. It was for sex trafficking. It was for transportation to engage in prostitution. It was for RICO. So the bail is going to be in prison. It's going to be in detention rather. And when sentencing is done in a few months, he will know his fate. But what do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok. If you want me to go live on any other topic that is in your mind, or you can send me a video, send me something to my inbox so I can read it and react to it. Thank you for staying with me. I hope you found my live engaging and enjoyable. And I'll see you in the next live session. Thank you.